We're going to be heading up to the site of the greatest battle that's ever been fought between the nation of Scotland and the nation of England. We're going to track back to the 1500s to a place called Flodden. I figure if we can investigate what went wrong for Scotland, then we can learn a lot about how to battle in the spiritual realm and how we can have great success in the year to come in Hope City Church. Well, as you know, we'll be camping for a couple of nights on the way up to Flodden, and I've personally hired a camper van. Welcome to your new home, boys. Welcome to your new home, boys. I think it's going to be quite a cold night, not as cold as it would be if we didn't have this amazing cloud cover over us. Hopefully it's not going to rain, but we're going to try and enjoy ourselves as much as possible. Andy's got a few instructions, so it's now over to Andy.
Okay, boys, first things first, shelter. We've got to get the tents up pretty quick. We've only got about 45 minutes of daylight left, so I hope you all put your weight in. We'll get the tents out. Then it's fire. We've got to get a fire going, keep warmth, get the fireplace is the heart of the camp, all right? Keep everyone's morale going. And then thirdly, it's food time. Get the meat, we get the steaks, we get the chops, everything. We've got to get it out and get prepared. Okay, let's get ready to rumble. Follow us.
Okay, guys, you've got about 10 minutes to put up the tents, and I'll be inspecting them. So, off you go. Let's go.
Think about the floor, any spikes. You don't want to be sleeping on a tree root or anything like that. A little bit of prep before you put it up will help.
Tree roots absolutely everywhere. I don't know.
Please hide me around the rock. Please hide me, Lord.
Andy's in a hammock tonight. In a hammock.
The rock cried out. I can't hide you, the rock cried out. I can't hide you, the rock cried out. I ain't gonna hide you down.
Change location.
I said rock.
Realized my first location had too many roots down. So the boss said, listen, make sure you don't sleep on roots.
Hold on that day, so I ran to the river. It was bleeding around to the sea. It was bleeding around to the sea. It was bleeding all on that day.
Perfect.
So I ran to the river. It was boiling around to the sea.
Oh, I wish I could get involved, but I'm serving by oversight. Someone's got to do it. Keep going, guys. You're going great. Encouragement sandwich always works.
Don't you see me down here praying?
Fly sheet to my hammock. So let's get this fella out. It's going to keep me dry when it rains tonight. My hammock's under there already. Right, guys. I'm in. See ya.
I found the past, it can be something you have to do or good discipline, good example, but I've felt like I've really enjoyed having regular times of prayer, you know. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think like Ghosh has had a real revelation recently and on prayer. And I think it's just, like for me, it's interesting. It's always been a battle. Like the actual idea of like that whole disciplined prayer life has never been like a natural thing. And so I've always had to just keep working at it, keep doing something fresh.
Yep. Freshness is important, yeah.
And just doing different things and, you know, so like I think if I was left to my own devices, I'd almost forget. You know, but although I did when I was at Bible college, I read a book by a guy called Samuel Chadwick called The Path of Prayer.
Right.
And just and it was really helpful because he talks about actually walking in prayer. So it wasn't just, you know, it wasn't just the, you know, hour quiet time.
Yes.
Every morning. You know, it was actually engaging with God. And I think that's what, you know, I do have those. I do have my important times in the week when I'm pressing in, but just also you know, become quite aware. Just like keep talking in my head. I'm always with God. You know, I'm always talking to Him.
Yeah.
But I saw this movie a while back called it was a disaster movie called Deepwater Horizon. It was an all right movie. I actually saw it in the 4DX. You know, which have all the smells and the water. We had to turn off the water because it's set on an oil rig in an ocean. So we were getting wet anyway.
Bits of oil.
Yeah, so it was a silly movie. It's a disaster. Well, it's a true story, and so it's about this oil rig that, you know, obviously fire, explosions, all that sort of stuff. But right at the very end, when all the men are rescued, there's this like they're all like redneck Americans, you know, all kind of just like big burly men, and but they seem to have this honor code. They seem to have this faith code that's kind of goes through the story. And then right at the end, when they're on the rescue ship and they're all like just sort of almost just recovering from what they went through, the captain, the chief, gets up and he just says to all the guys, "Let's take a knee." Right. And it's this amazing moment right at the end of this like Hollywood blockbuster, where there's like 40, 50 huge guys just take a knee on this boat and all start saying the Lord's Prayer together. And in this movie, and it was kind of one of those moments where you're like, it just sort of struck me, that sort of the sense of awe and the sense of just the power of God. That sometimes in our prayer life, and I think that's where I found myself, is just that we can just be walking with God and we can just be having this nice time prayer, but actually just to have a moment where you are so aware of the majesty and the greatness of God that it kind of takes you to your knees, you know?
I love that.
And it became, you know, it almost became part of something I did, certainly for a while. And then the pattern was just rather than just to pray at my desk or, you know, walk around the living room, was just actually take a knee. You know? We did a couple of men's breakfasts. Yeah, and it's just, because I think sometimes when we do those actions, I always laugh, you know, when we're in church and we're singing a song, you know, bending, you know, bow down and stuff. And we're all stood there with the hands in the air. And part of me is like, I always feel like...
I've bowed down a couple of times. I feel slightly self-conscious.
Exactly, isn't it? It's funny.
It does trigger something because everyone thinks, gosh.
But I think there's something quite powerful when you do actually... you know, anyway, I end up... That sort of stuff, then I end up going... I went to Scripture and, you know, sort of try to build something around that, build something kind of sense and what's that. And there's a great little moment in Daniel chapter 6 when...
Nebuchadnezzar?
Yeah, Daniel. So Daniel's kind of, he's been exiled, he's taken into Babylon, isn't he? He's put into the sort of the school of the Babylonians. He proves himself to God by staying true to him, and God kind of raises him up. And so towards the end of his story, he's now like this official high up in Nebuchadnezzar's kind of cabinet. And of course he's a Jew, surrounded by Babylonians. They all hate him. They want to set him up. And so they set him up by asking the king to do this decree that says for the next 30 days everyone has to bow down to him.
Right.
And otherwise it's going to get thrown in the lion's den. And it's this great little moment because it basically says, Daniel heard it.
Yes.
And it says he immediately went home, went to his upstairs room, opened up the windows of the door towards Jerusalem, got down on his knee 3 times a day, prayed to his God and gave thanks. And it's part of me is like, I love the audacity in it.
I love that.
But it just spoke so much to me, like just that sense in the face of, opposition, in the face
Yes.
of, just people accusations, in the face, just trying to like he's totally out of his comfort zone, totally in a place that's foreign to him. Even though God's given him great blessings, suddenly now the whole world's against him, but instead of like kind of thinking, okay, well, for the next 30 days, I better just, stay quiet. And he goes to the upstairs room.
Yes.
He opens the windows towards Jerusalem, and he's praying out the window on his knees,
Full of boldness.
3 times a day. And so I just that really spoke to me, because I just thought, there's something about that place of submission before God that I think really brings us into, something.
Yeah, and really as a
Powerful,
church,
fresh.
there's no doubt that we all need a revelation of the awe of God and the awesomeness of God. People often have said that life's difficult, they've got a lot of difficulties. And I think my revelation is it's beyond difficult. This thing's impossible. And I think it's driven me to prayer, just knowing I'm at a dead end. I'm zealous, I try my best, but it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And there's kind of like a little mantra out at the moment that you're enough.
Yeah.
People who aren't Christians, like to commend each other saying, you're enough for this situation. But I just think it's completely the opposite for me.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not enough. And it's just made me realize that I need God and I need miracles. And there's a sense of respect for God.
Yeah.
That maybe I didn't have so much a year ago, but I'm sort of grit now, and I could feel a fresh surrender
Yeah,
and a fresh.
I think that's what caught me. It was that sense of, I can have my nice moments with God, but then it's just, there are times when God needs to be God, doesn't he?
God needs to be God. That's
God,
brilliant.
he needs to be.
Yes.
He needs to be Lord. He needs to be sovereign. We need to submit our moments. I mean, I love it. In that story, it says, it's really specific. It says he goes and prays 3 times a day, and I think that wasn't a religious thing.
No.
It was just this audacious thing. I'm not just going to pray once a day to my God.
Yeah. It's like an
when they're saying to me, I have to go and pray to Nebuchadnezzar,
Yes.
I'm going to go and pray 3 times. I'm crying. He had no other options. In that moment, he knew all he had was for God to move. And of course, at the end of the story, he does actually they obviously tell on him, and he gets thrown in the lion's den.
Yeah.
But even then, he holds on to God. And of course, the rest of the story is that God shuts the mouth of the lions. And next thing, Nebuchadnezzar's saying, I want to serve your God.
Yeah. But it's not only true, it's also symbolically true in that we do have a lion against us.
Yeah.
And he roars. And I think a lot of things that people think are natural are actually spiritual.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of trouble that happens that are actually caused by unseen forces in the 4th dimension. And I think that God visualizes things in the Old Testament for things that are unseen in the New Testament. And I think we really do need to have a surge in our church of people simply saying, I need God. Otherwise, partly our job becomes entertainment.
Yeah.
Or our job becomes just trying to be the greatest showman.
Yeah.
But we're not showmen. We're not beggars. We're people that are called to lead people into the presence of God. And if we don't do it, I think we've negated our duty and stepped down. I think it was Spurgeon said, if God's called you to be a missionary, don't stoop to being a prince.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we take, the popularity of a prince over the importance of being a missionary and being a priest.
Yeah.
And weeping between the porch and the altar and standing between heaven and earth and creating a portal hole so that people can really meet with God.
It's quite a good challenge to think, when was the last time you were so in need of God to move in your world, it took you to your knees.
Yeah, I think people, I think what we do is we look for, we think they're natural forces and we look for natural answers. And I think that we believe in psychiatrists, we believe in counsellors, we believe in that, but not as the first port of call. You know, the first port of call, we're going to give God some breathing space to do a miracle. And otherwise, we're caught in quite a natural realm that we were not born to be advocates of the natural realm. Other people can do that quite well, but we're called to bring down heaven, and bring down fire, and see God burn up our enemies, and see God burn our hearts with a passion for Him.
And I love that the flip side of the story is, as much as we submit, you know, we kind of come into that place where we're almost, you know, before the throne, crying out to God. But then Scripture's full of the fact that God stoops down to make us great. It's full of, you know, He welcomes, He accepts us into, you know, His presence, you know, into the throne room, you know, unblemished. You know, we're children of God that are lifted up, become co-heirs. And so as much as there's that submission, there's also that sense of, you know, it's like I almost feel the more I go to my knees, the more then God lifts me back up.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant. Yes.
There's a psalm, I think it's, I can't remember which psalm it is, but it might be the first psalm, but it talks about the wicked won't be able to stand in judgment.
Right.
And the word stand in judgment actually means, it doesn't mean that they'll be like, they won't stand in judgment, as in, it means that they won't be able to stand in judgment. They will be left on their knees.
Yeah.
You know, but the righteous will stand. And it's that sort of sense that we come to God on our knees, but He lifts us up into, you know, He lifts us up in His grace, and He lifts us up in His presence.
I think we've been slightly sobered lately by the power of God, I think. I think it's not taken our joy out, but I think it's just made us see life a little bit more seriously, take God more seriously, and I hope it spreads across the church. I hope, that people really take note of how mighty God actually is. Come on, let's keep walking this way.
I waited outside. I took it remote. Full time, you talk your money up while it's living in a coal mine. Full time to call your mind. Hey, my. Told folks you know you mope it up. Well, you wanted it to hold it. You're back and forth with that while it's living in a coal mine. Told time to call your mind. Hey, my. Told folks you know you mope it up. Well, you wanted it to hold it. You're back and forth with that.
When I was 16, I was diagnosed with a blood disorder, aplastic anemia.
What is it? What is that?
It's where basically your bone marrow stops producing blood cells, stops producing your blood. I got pretty close to dying, and then when I'd survived like 3 years, and they said 3 or 4 years with how bad I was.
The doctor said that?
Yes, they expected me to die. When I was about 18, I remember them basically doing a letter so I could get some like sickness benefits, and in dictating that letter they were saying, you know, we expect the outcome to be death.
It's amazing that.
I remember crying out because I'd prayed a prayer, and I cried out. I just said, look, God, are you really there for me? And I'd actually had quite a big reaction to the drug they were giving me, and I just cried out to God, and in that moment just felt, and I had no point of reference, just felt the peace of God, and just as if God was saying to my heart, you're going to be okay. And long story short of that, about 3 or 4 months later, because I didn't have an immediate reaction to the drug, but 3 or 4 months later, my blood count started to rise. And, well, it's a long time ago now, being 19, so...
About 50 years ago.
About 50 years ago.
Look how young you look for 70.
I know.
Yeah, I think I must have been about 10 when Mum got diagnosed with MS. And for her health went downhill fast. Like, we're talking within 2 or 3 years, she's completely wheelchair bound. So yeah, it was quite a turnaround moment for me and my brother and sister as well, just dealing with that. Yeah, and then so she battled with it over a decade before passing away. So I think my daughter was born at the time, so I'd have been about 22. Kyla was just born, and yeah, she passed away. I think even in a sense, our parents talking about it, they knew my mum had this degenerative disease, and so it was very much letting us know when the day comes for her to pass away, I'm going to be fine, going to a better place, and we want you as kids all to have this same faith. As a young boy, I was scared of the future. Like, I wanted my life to amount to something. Like, what is my purpose? And so that was literally the message. The day I responded in Church for Salvation, it was a message on purpose. God has a purpose for you. And obviously, like I say, raising my hand, saying yes to Jesus, it was also saying yes to the purpose he had for me. So again, just had God that fear in me that made me bend my knee and realise I need him as Lord. It was also linked to what the future was I had in him.
I always knew that God was real. But when I hit university, I just went quite crazy at university. And then I got kicked out of the college we were living in with about 6 guys. Partly I got kicked out through related activity, even though they were strong into those certain activities. And then I begged to get back in, and it shocked me enough for me to think, I probably need to get right with God. And then went worse, and then they had a big crusade at university called No Life, No Christ, No Life. No Christ, No Life. So they put chalk everywhere, they chalked it all over the pavements and that. And it angered a lot of people, but for me, I thought, gosh, I'm going to have to go to one of the nights. And so the first night I went to was, at the end, someone who'd met my sister on a train 1,000 miles from where we were at, just out of nowhere, and had prayed for me. She came up to me at the end of the meeting saying, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'll pray a prayer. And this was the girl who'd prayed for me, who just met my sister not long ago. So it was all quite profound. And also, I think for me, it wasn't so much an emotional experience, it was a knowledge, this is true. This is right, this is true. And I think truth has its own emotion, because you feel like, this fits, this is proper. You know, so I think it got me through, even though my heart was I was still going out with a girl at the time. Just started going with a girl, right? So that kind of went into just difficult times for about a year or so, until it broke up entirely. And then God took me out of all my non-Christian friends and took me up to central Queensland, where the church that I went to, everyone was like a farmer or had never been educated. And it blew me apart, because I'd never met people that hadn't been educated in my entire life before. And so I was confronted with authentic faith. And I think that was the start of the real transformation in my life.
Next. That's it. Follow the others, Chris.
You don't have to, Sal. We need to rinse. We need to rinse our dishes, even though we're camping. Dishes need to be rinsed.
This is Flodden Field, guys. There's the memorial up there.
When we do actually step out and begin to move, the great thing we can rely upon is a God who guides us.
Right.